Daniel, one of the school toughs, walked through the halls like he owned them. Daniel wasn't the biggest boy at the school, but he was the toughest. He wore jeans, a t-shirt with a rock band graphic, athletic socks, sneakers, and a bad attitude. Most of the time he was with his friends, but right now he was all alone and headed towards his classroom. The halls were mostly empty as Daniel was already late for his next class. He thought that they should be happy that he was coming at all. Daniel pushed by some dorky student who was looking into his classroom. The boy gave Daniel a strange look, but Daniel didn't mind. Daniel stared back as he brushed by. "What are you looking at?" Without waiting for an answer, Daniel continued into his class. Daniel and the teacher locked eyes for a second, but that didn't intimidate Daniel at all. He headed towards the back of the class where his assigned seat was supposed to be. A moment later, Daniel found himself in an adult-sized stroller in the front row. The stroller was placed by Tammy. Tammy is the brightest student in the class. She took notes for both of them. Daniel's stroller was pointed straight at the board, and due to its construction, he couldn't look anywhere else but at the teacher and her work. Daniel now wore a footy jumpsuit with a hooded reindeer fleece. He was also in a diaper and plastic panties. He had a pacifier in his mouth that was tied in the back, making it impossible for him to remove. Although every time he tried to reach it, Tammy smacked his hands away anyway. Somehow Daniel was sure that he would remain like this until he got his grades up to at least a B+. Of course, Tammy would be a big help, since she took all his notes and helped him with his schoolwork and homework. Daniel would have to decide whether he wanted to fight his circumstances or work hard to get his grades up. The choice was his. Daniel didn't know what happened to him, although everyone in the class thought it was perfectly normal for a toddler Daniel's size to be in a stroll inside a high school classroom. Daniel couldn't see behind him to know that there was another toddler there. Daniel was trapped in the stroller with a pacifier in his mouth. He wanted to shout out, but he couldn't as long as his mouth was blocked by the pacifier. He tried to spit it out, but a string around his head held it in place. He tried to pull it out with his hands, but his arms wouldn't move as well as they used to, and when his hands got near his mouth, one of the other students, he didn't know her name, would slap it away. Frustrated, he started kicking his feet and yelling the best he could. His legs felt heavy to him, so he couldn't thrash like he wanted to. "Tammy," Mrs. Walker said, "Daniel seems a bit fussy. Maybe he is overtired and needs a nap." "Yeah, Mrs. Walker," Tammy said. She then got out of her seat where Daniel couldn't see her and got something. She then reappeared in front of Daniel. Daniel's pacifier had a tube on the outer end of it, and Tammy used it to insert a liquid into Daniel's mouth through his pacifier. Daniel immediately noticed the sour taste in his mouth. It only took a second before Daniel's tongue became numb and he couldn't make any sound at all. Then his jaws went slack, not that he could get the pacifier out of his mouth regardless. Soon the numb feeling moved down his throat and into the rest of his body. Daniel panicked but found it harder and harder to move his limbs, even the minimal amount he could before. His eyelids felt heavy and started to close. Daniel expected to fall asleep, but he didn't. Even though his eyes were closed, he was still completely aware of himself. He felt his arm lifted and something soft put under his elbow. Daniel had no way of knowing it was a teddy bear. The pacifier was removed from his mouth, but Daniel was paralyzed and couldn't speak. From the outside world, he looked like a big sleeping baby in a stroller. The lesson continued. Daniel heard every word as the rest of the class was reasonably quiet. After the class was over, Daniel felt the pacifier reinserted into his mouth. Then he felt the movement of the stroller being pushed out of the room. It stopped in the hall. "Daniel, you had better stop that," Tammy admonished. Daniel still looked like a sleeping baby. "You know I'm on your side, but if the teacher calls your parents, this could get worse." Right now you can function like a toddler. If I let you out of the stroller and took the dummy out of your mouth, you would be able to walk and talk somewhat. But if your parents get bad reports about you, you could find yourself an infant, not able to sit up on your own or able to say even the simplest baby nonsense words. Is that what you want? Daniel hadn't thought that it could get worse. Continuing, Tammy said, I'm going to wake you from your nap. You'd better be good. Waking, Daniel opened his eyes. He saw the soft thing held in his arm was a plush teddy bear. Controlling himself, he realized his predicament. He could see that he was in a baby's romper, even though he didn't know what it was called. He didn't have to see it directly, but he knew he was also wearing a diaper. Daniel was quiet as Tammy rolled him into his next class. Daniel had been reacting to the situation. He didn't stop to think what could happen. Finding himself fastened in a stroller in his own classroom and dressed like a toddler was shocking, and he reacted accordingly. Tammy explaining that things could get worse never occurred to him. He couldn't have imagined that his parents were involved in this. He originally thought it was some sort of practical joke. In his heart he thought it would be over soon. Tammy dissuaded him of these notions. He now knew that he was going to be treated like a toddler, even though he was attending high school, until he got his grades up to a B+. He would stay like this, all day, every day, until his goal was reached. If he didn't, he could be like this forever. Daniel knew this in his gut, without knowing that his home and particularly his room had been transformed to a state in which a toddler of his age and height lived. In short, his house had been toddler-proofed and everything that a teenager would want or needed had been removed. After his next class, Daniel's pacifier was removed from his mouth and he decided to ask Tammy some questions. He knew instinctively that she was on his side and he could trust her answers. He started with the most obvious question. If I am potty, what happens? Then I change you, silly. What did you think happens? I'm here to help you. Think of me as your babysitter/tutor. Can't my friends help me? With schoolwork, I don't think so. I mean out of this. No, everyone will treat you like a toddler. But they know I'm not. They know you are being punished. They don't think anything is wrong with any of this. Then why won't they help me? They don't want to get punished too. Will they make fun of me? Don't be silly. Who makes fun of a toddler? Why? Tammy slipped the pacifier back into Daniel's mouth, silencing the boy. No more questions, we have to go or we will be late for your next class. Daniel was sitting in his stroller paying attention to the classwork. He wanted to get out of this as soon as possible. He could get his grades up to a B+. He didn't need an A. Without warning, he wasn't in his class anymore. He wasn't in his stroller either. He was sitting down and he was peeing. He could feel the hard seat of the toilet bowl under his butt. There wasn't any padding on that seat at all. Daniel was staring straight ahead. In front of him he could see the back of a stall door that could be found in public bathrooms which accommodated more than one person at a time. The color of the door was sort of a washed-out pink. Daniel looked down and couldn't see his legs. The front part of a gray skirt hid his legs from his view. The skirt extended past his knees. Daniel's hand flew to his crotch, but he already knew his dick was still there. He didn't have to see his dick to know it was hanging down loosely between his legs, peeing. But he pulled back his skirt to make sure it was there. He was relieved when he saw it. He finished peeing, there wasn't any reason to stop. Looking down, he realized that he had 2 mounds on his chest. Once again he moved his hands. He grabbed at his chest. The bra which gave the illusion of boobs under his top deflated with the pressure of his hands. He didn't have boobs of any type on his chest, he was just wearing a bra with strongly padded cups. When he was done, he got up. He realized he was wearing shoes with a small heel. He couldn't see them because his skirt had dropped back in place, but he could feel the panties which had been pushed down to just below his knees. He had to pull them up if he was going to be able to walk. Reaching down to pull them, the panties were very tight, they crushed his penis against his crotch in a way that was totally different than when he wore boys' briefs, even very tight ones. Daniel discovered he was also wearing nude tights. He pulled up the tights into their proper place. Instinctively, Daniel turned to flush the toilet. This is when he saw his hand. They were his hand, but his nails had been shaped and painted a pale pink. Daniel looked down to inspect what he was wearing. He could see he was wearing a floral print top of some type and the aforementioned gray skirt. He put one foot out in front of himself to show himself the shoe. Daniel could see the top of his nylon-covered foot in the shoe. It was a tan pointy-toed pump with small sturdy heel, not that he knew they were called pumps. Daniel couldn't see his body properly. He needed a mirror. It didn't matter if this was a girl's restroom or a boy's restroom. He wanted to see himself. Besides, he couldn't change into something else no matter what he was wearing. Daniel opened the stall door and stepped outside. "Did you wipe?" Tammy asked. No. A woman always wipes after using the toilet. Don't forget for next time. Now wash your hands and fix your makeup, Tammy instructed. In front of Daniel was a bank of mirrors over a long row of sinks. Daniel could see himself for the first time. He hadn't changed physically. He was still himself, which he had assumed, but what he didn't know was that his face was made up. This was also the first time he noticed he was wearing dangling earrings. Daniel could see that he wasn't dressed like a girl that would attend his high school, he was dressed like a middle-aged woman about his mother's age or more likely a little older. His clothes were pretty, but they weren't sexy at all. Teenage girls would never wear tights with a skirt in ordinary circumstances. The sleeves on the tunic he was wearing were longer than a teen would wear, and this floral print hadn't been in style for decades, not that Daniel would know such things. But even with Daniel's untrained eye, he knew none of his female friends would be wearing what he was wearing. Strangely enough, Daniel realized that even with everything he was wearing, his hair hadn't changed from how he combed it this morning. When Daniel stepped closer to the sink, Tammy handed him a clutch-type purse which matched his shoes. Daniel didn't know if he was in better shape or worse shape than he was a few minutes ago. He also didn't know that back at home, his room had changed from its toddler style to the room of an unmarried woman in her early 50s. "First wash your hands, and then we'll fix your makeup," Tammy instructed. Daniel put his clutch on the counter and soaped his hands. Then he ran them under the water. He kept his eyes in the mirror as he did so. He could see the makeup covering his face. The makeup was applied as if he already had a feminine face, even though he clearly did not. Tammy pointed out the flaws in Daniel's makeup. She then went about explaining how Daniel should fix each one. "Take out your blush from your purse, no, that is the blush," Tammy pointed to the proper item. "You start from low on the cheekbone," Tammy indicated an area on his face, "and use long, light motions to sweep the blush across your cheeks." Tammy went over every place that needed a touch-up and informed Daniel how to fix those areas properly. Daniel's hand was unpracticed. He had to remove what he had done several times and start again. Finally, eyebrow pencil was used to give his brows a feminine arc. During the demonstration, girls came in and out of the restroom. None of them reacted like anything was wrong. One even talked to Tammy as Daniel was still fixing his face. "Now remember, when we walk to class, take small steps. Don't overdo it. Don't walk like a runway model or a prostitute on the street. Your walk must be smooth and effortless. When you get to class and are ready to sit, Don't forget to smooth your skirt out from under you and then sit with your knees together. Daniel had problems trying to walk as expected. He would overcompensate and walk cartoonishly. After losing his temper in frustration, Tammy pulled Daniel over to the side. You had better get this right and get your grades up, or you know what will happen? What? Your parents will throw you out of the house and you will have to live and share a bed with your boyfriend. Do you want that? Tammy said in hushed but insistent tones. Daniel knew what Tammy said was true. He was obviously already halfway there, judging by his dress and how no one thought anything was odd about him. It was one thing to be as he is, or was in the case of his toddlerhood, but to be forced out of his own house and to share a place with his boyfriend, he didn't know if he could handle that. Daniel didn't want to even think about the share the bed part at all. Especially with a man he didn't know. The pair walked down the hallway. Daniel did as instructed. He didn't say anything. He was trying to concentrate on walking correctly. After school, Tammy reminded him, we are going to the salon. Your wigs have already been fitted and you can take them home. Inside the classroom, Daniel put his purse on his desk, pulled his chair out, smoothed his skirt and sat down. He took out his books and sat with his knees together, waiting for the lesson to begin. Later, Daniel was walking down the hall. He didn't need to concentrate on his gait anymore. His clutch was under his crooked arm with his hand hanging limply from his wrist. He was taking small steps, although he was walking quickly on his way to his next class. He was happy as he thought his grades would rise right after his next round of tests. Of course, he wouldn't know for sure until after the marking period was over. Despite being a student, Daniel didn't have much interaction with the other classmates. If he would interact with anyone besides Tammy, it would be with the faculty or staff. He was being treated like a middle-aged woman, not a typical high school student. Without warning, Daniel was no longer walking quickly, he was hunched over with a slow gait. He was holding onto a metal bar that was moving with him. There was a pain in his back. He tried to stand up straight. He let go of the bar and was about to lose his balance when he felt a supporting hand on his back. Take it easy there, Daniel, Tammy said as she steadied Daniel. Hold on to your walker or you will fall down. Daniel could recognize Tammy's voice, but the sound was at once louder than he expected and a bit distorted too. Daniel didn't know he was wearing hearing aids. Daniel did as he was told. Looking at his hand, he realized he was no longer wearing nail polish on his fingernails. They weren't manicured anymore either. He saw the long sleeve of the shirt he was wearing. It was red plaid and made of flannel. Despite being indoors and wearing a long-sleeved flannel shirt, Daniel realized that he was chilly. He moved his gaze to his chest. The bumps made by his bra was gone. Looking down past his shirt, he saw his brown slacks being held in place by a belt. On his feet he wore brown socks and corrective shoes. Even though he was wearing glasses, his vision, like his hearing, was a bit distorted. Daniel carefully raised his hands to remove his glasses, feeling a twinge of pain in his hand, only to find that without the glasses, he was almost blind. "Are you all right?" Tammy asked. "I don't know." As Daniel became more aware of his surroundings, Daniel realized he was not only chilly, but his body ached all over. "It's time for your pills anyway. Come with me." Daniel didn't know what pills he was supposed to be taking, but he wasn't going to take any. "I don't want any pills." "Listen, Daniel, we've been over this. You have to take your pills. If you don't, your parents will put you into a nursing home who'll make you. You'll then have to stay there all the time you are not in school. Do you really want that?" Daniel was back to being treated like a man, but not like a boy in high school. He would be treated like an elderly fellow. The worst part of his predicament was going to the bathroom. It was far worse than when he was supposed to be a baby or a woman. He still had to sit down, but now he felt he had to pee. Pee very badly, but he couldn't do it. He would sit on the toilet wanting to go, needing to go. But a small amount would come out of him. Not only that, but it hurt as it come out. What used to be a 2-minute pee could take 20 or 30 minutes. Not only that, he still felt he had to go even after he was finished. He was headed to have one of these bathroom breaks when he found himself on the ground by a tree just outside the school. His right leg was lifted in the air and was peeing freely for the first time in a while. The pee was splattering off the tree. What Daniel felt wasn't embarrassment, but relief. Daniel couldn't talk, his mouth was muzzled closed. He looked up and saw Tammy holding a leash that was attached to a leather harness that surrounded his torso. Besides the harness and a dog collar around his neck, Daniel was completely naked. His butt as well as his dick was on full display to the world. Daniel was going to get up, but when he looked into the stern look in Tammy's eyes, he dared not. Daniel could imagine that his room had been transformed into a room full of squeaky dog toys and a dog bed. That if he said anything, he would be threatened with having to sleep outside in a fenced-in yard and a cold doghouse. Daniel knew the drill by now. Best not to do anything that could make matters worse. When he was done, Daniel played the good boy and looked up at Tammy. Tammy walked Daniel from tree to see if Daniel would poop. Daniel wasn't ready to poop outside in front of everyone else. Satisfied that Daniel didn't need to go, Tammy walked him back into the school. Daniel stayed on all fours the entire way. Then she led him into the classroom and she took her usual seat in the front row. Daniel squatted with butt touching the back of his ankles and his elbows locked straight and his hands on the floor, looking up at the board, waiting for the teacher to start the lesson. He knew that Tammy would write down his notes for him and go over them later. Daniel was making progress towards his goal. He was starting to not only learn the material, but to truly understand it in all his subjects. He proudly walked down the hall on all fours with his tail wagging after he thought he aced a history test. Then Tammy was gone. Daniel was all alone in the hallway. He was surrounded by bullies. He wasn't naked anymore, he wore a school uniform. It wasn't the school uniform from his school. They didn't wear uniforms here, but he wore the uniform from a private Catholic elementary school. He was wearing navy dress pants, with a yellow golf shirt, navy socks, and black tie-up shoes. There were 4 or 5 boys that were menacing him. There were too many to fight off. He knew all the boys, but they didn't seem to know who he is, or at least was. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't fight, he couldn't run, he instinctively put his thumb into his mouth and started to cry. He hadn't cried in years. Not even when he was spending days being pushed around in a stroller and wearing a diaper. "Get away from him!" Tammy shouted as she ran over. The group of bullies moved on. Daniel flew into Tammy's arms and hugged her. He had never been so scared in his life. "It's okay. No one will hurt you while I'm around." Tammy took Daniel's hand and escorted him to his next class. They took their seats in the front row. Tammy took out Daniel's supplies from a Mickey Mouse book bag and placed them in front of Daniel. Daniel sat up straight. In his seat. He assumed he was supposed to be a boy, but he didn't care. He was just happy to be wearing clothes again. He didn't care that he was treated like a first grader in high school. This was a big step up from how things had been. How long has this been going on and how many changes had happened, Daniel didn't know. Daniel had long since cared. Daniel arrives at school dressed for his after-school job. He hasn't time to go home and change after school. He has a full day of classes, an hour to do his homework, and then he has to get back to the street corner where he plies his trade. Daniel is wearing a pair of Daisy Dukes shorts, a bikini top and stilettos, and that is all. He isn't even wearing panties underneath his shorts. His clothes is designed to be both sexy and easy to get into and out of. His face is caked with makeup. It was also designed to be sexy, but it is also thick to disguise his worn-out appearance. Daniel still sees Tammy in his classes and then after school with homework help, but he doesn't need her anymore. He is self-motivating. He knows he aced his final tests, all he needs is for the marking period to end and then return to normalcy. Daniel in his stilettos was walking down the hall towards his next class. His butt was swaying wildly from side to side while his arms and hands were in perpetual motion. His fingernails were very long and painted bright red. "Hey Danny, wait up," Mark Thompson calls out. Mark Thompson was one of Daniel's friends before all this began. He is still his friend. Daniel stopped and waited for Mark to catch up. "Hiya stud, what's up?" "Danny, I am having a party at my house on Friday. I would love for you to come." "I can't honorable, I wish I could, but I am working." "You seem to work every night." This statement was true. "I know it seems that way. But Daddy needs his bread and who is going to get it for him?" "I understand. My dad is a bear sometimes too. If you change your mind, let me know." "I will honorable. Hey, you think you can talk to some of your friends and get me a freebie?" "I don't think you want anything from my friends on the street. I meant the real girls. Nothing is ever for free. You know that." Daniel reached down to Mark's crotch and gave his dick a hard squeeze. "I suppose. If I had a job like you, then I would be able. You don't want a job like mine. Believe me." It was at this time that Daniel reached his next class. "I'll see ya and I'll let you know if I can get away," Daniel said, but he knew that was impossible. Daniel's friends talked to him every once in a while. They asked him to go here or there, but Daniel always demurred. But still it was nice to talk to his old friends. To Daniel's old friends, Daniel was just another student with a job after school. It seemed perfectly normal to everyone that a teenage she-male prostitute attends class with them. Daniel is still treated like he belongs there like anyone else. Additionally, the other girls on the street accept Daniel as one of their own. He doesn't have the surgical and hormonal advantages of the other girls, but he is treated as if he does have big fake tits and a hugely rounded ass like the rest of them. Daniel knew it wouldn't be long until he has reached his goal and can return to his normal life. Just a few more days. That is what he hopes. Daniel wasn't wearing heels or Daisy Dukes or any of the whorish clothes he used to wear to work anymore. He wore jeans, a t-shirt with a rock band graphic, athletic socks and sneakers. He wasn't in his class anymore, he was in the principal's office. The principal was sitting at her desk looking across to Daniel. "I don't know what I am going to do with you," she lectured. "You got into another fight again." "But it wasn't." "I don't want to hear it. I've given you chance after chance. But you always end up here." Daniel didn't dare say another word. "You're getting into all these fights. We can't have that. I'm going to call your parents and then we'll have a discussion what is about to happen. But as of now you are suspended." "No, you can't do that. I'll be good, I promise." Daniel meant it, although he didn't know about what fight the principal was talking about. A couple minutes ago, he was hardly even a boy. He had long painted fingernails and wore torn fishnet stocking, a thin tube top and a scrap of clothing that was called a skirt. Now he was dressed in jeans and sitting in the principal's office having to answer for a fight he didn't know anything about. "You promised before but you never stuck to it. Please, please, you can't call them." "I'll do anything." Daniel was even more scared now than he was when he was the little boy being beaten up. He could lose everything if the principal called his parents. He would never return to his old life. He could be stuck like this or maybe have a worse fate. I've been trying. I swear, if you let me off this one time I'll be a perfect student. I see your grades have been improving and you aren't late to class anymore. But I have to do it. You brought this on yourself. No. Daniel screamed to no avail. He was stuck with this life forever. It didn't matter if he got his grades up or not. Daniel's parents took their troubled son home. He was broken.